Well, welcome to Rust Wine Co. I'm Brett Thiessen, the manager of viticulture for Rust Winery down on the Golden Mile Bench. We're sitting here at the original estate house that was built in place in 1964. 4 years after that, this vineyard was planted with a few varietals, mainly hybrids, but a little bit of Okanagan Riesling and Bacchus. So seeing that the market was kind of changing, a few years after that, the owner got wise and started planting more serious vinifera. In the early 70s, mid 70s, there was a lot of these hybrids pulled out, and some of the first plantings of Gewürztraminer were planted in the Okanagan Valley. The Golden Mile Bench is a really special place. It was the first designated sub-GI in the Okanagan. If you look at Burgundy, you can say all Pinot Noir comes from Burgundy, and you don't really know what pocket it came from. So being able to put that sub-GI of Golden Mile Bench really kind of puts that place in perspective to where we are in the Okanagan Valley. It's about a 6.7 kilometer stretch, basically starting at Fairview Road in Oliver and heading south towards Osoyoos. And we just happen to be on the very tail end of it, on the very south point, with our 8.6 acres of Gewürztraminer, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and the oldest, I think, Zinfandel that was planted in the Okanagan Valley. Rust, we've only been around as Rust Wine Co. since the year 2017. That's when we opened our doors. We were formerly Rustico Winery, right? So one of the things that makes the Golden Mile Bench stand out and why it was decided to be its own sub-GI was because of the mesoclimate here, which is just the small pocket of weather that we get that affects what we do in this spot instead of what's going on across the valley from us. The soil here is basically made up of fluvial fans that run off of Cobo Mountain. When the glaciers were grinding away at these mountains, it left us with a lot of rock, a lot of gravel, and a lot of sandy loam. The good news about that is any rain that we get, we don't sit on any water table, so the vines kind of have to be at our mercy for what we water them, so we can really control how we dial in the amount of water that the fruit gets and really make the fruit how we want it. Because we're about 40 to 100 meters above the valley floor, we don't really have to worry as much about frost as well. So any cold air that comes off the mountain to the east of us settles, or to the west of us, settles back out to the east into the valley, and we don't have to worry as much about frost damage in our vineyards. If you were here with us today, you'd be able to come take a walk through the vines and see where we're at. We've just finished flowering a week or two ago, and we're through fruit set now. The berries are about pea size, maybe a little bit bigger, and we're about to be at bunch closure within the next few weeks, which puts us almost a month away from veraison, which is where they soften up, start to ripen, and they change color. One of the things we focus on at Rust is having our wines speak to a place and a time. So not only are they vintage wines, but each wine is single vineyard, single varietal, with the exception of a few blended wines. So in front of me here, I've got the Golden Mile Merlot from 2016, the Similkameen, which is just on the other side of Mount Cobo, from 2016 Merlot as well. For the two Syrahs we have at the moment, we've got the Golden Mile Syrah, which comes from the vineyard right behind me, and then we've got the Ferrera Syrah, which comes off of the Black Sage Bench, which is just to the east of us. And then we have the 2017 Zinfandel, which is grown just on the very east side, the southeast side of our property, which there's not very much of this grown in the valley entirely, and we have some of the oldest vines of that as well. So we'll taste through a few of the wines here, and just kind of explain what makes these unique from each other. Being that we go single vineyard, single varietal, we really get to show the terroir, and that's a big word a lot of people use in wine, but it's just that shows where this wine came from and what makes it different. So between these two Merlots, because they're on different sides of the mountain, one has an east slope, that one gets beautiful morning sunlight that really helps it kind of wake up in the morning. And in the words of Bill Eggert, just up the road at Fairview Cellars, he says, people are generally at their best in the morning, so why should it be different for vines? So the 2016 Merlot from the Golden Mile Bench property here at Rust. What we notice with this one is it gets beautiful morning sunlight, but because the sun goes behind the mountain to the west of us in the evenings, we get cooler evenings. So as the sugar starts to get higher in the fruit later in the season, the acid starts to drop. Those cool evenings help us retain that acid and really just balance the wine as opposed to just going straight high sugar. And that way we can keep our alcohols a little bit lower and keep the flavor a little bit more blended, a little more round. So the Golden Mile Merlot is a little bit more on the fruit forward side compared to some of the other ones that we have because it does get really high temperatures. It's about 3 degrees on average warmer than some of our vineyards a little bit further north than here. You get a little bit more opulence and a little bit more ripe fruit to it. So you notice that a little bit more candied quality. The alcohol might be a little higher on this one, which is not a bad thing if you really like your strong Merlots. Over the Mount Cobo to the west of us in the Similkameen Valley, we have the Lazy River Vineyard. We have about 71 acres of vines over there growing a lot of the fruit that goes into our single vineyard series from Rust Wine Co. So we have the 2016 Merlot side by side with the Golden Mile Merlot. This really gets to show the different characteristics of what the soil can do. We've got more gravel and sandy loam on this side, and on the other side we've got more sand, silt, and a little bit of clay. You get a different herbaceous note to it, a little bit more green characteristic, just because it's a characteristic of that vineyard that we have where we get more kind of white pepper instead of really ripe fruit. The point of us having so many different wines from the same grapes handled the same way in the cellar is just for people to be able to place what they really like when it comes out of the vineyard, and that's what goes into your glass. They're all drastically different, and coming up in the next few months here, and year over year, we'll be releasing more and more of these. I think in the 2018 vintage, we'll have 4 Merlot, 4 Syrah. 2019, we'll have 4 Merlot, 5 Syrah. So we just want to be able to show those different places, different time, and kind of put the stamp on where these individual bottles came from and how they got into your glass. A different complexity to that wine, a little bit less on the ripe fruit and a little bit more kind of back of the mouth feel to it. It just really kind of welcomes the palate, and I think you'll quite enjoy the 2016 Merlots that we offer. So just released, we have the 2017 Golden Mile Bench Syrah. This comes from on our property, actually just right behind me here. When you're coming up the driveway on the way in, it'll be just on your right-hand side. Again, the fruit was made all in the same style. We did the same amount of time and just tried to make the wines as similar as possible just to show off that different terroir. A little bit younger vines on this one than some of the other ones, but you get that really rich Syrah. The oak use on it is very modest. We don't want to have it very overpowering with the wood. We want this fruit to really shine as it's kind of our golden child on the Golden Mile Bench. If you've got a Syrah lover in your family, or if you love Syrah, it's really hard to go wrong. And if you don't like one of them, that's why we make a few extras. Everyone's got a different palate. I don't want to tell anyone what to taste, but I'm a bit of a Syrah guy myself, and Golden Mile Bench really holds up. In comparison to the one I'm going to open next, this is the Golden Mile fruit, which sees more morning sun and cooler evenings. And we're going to open the Black Sage Bench Syrah next, which is on the other side of the valley from us. And with that, it gets morning sun, afternoon sun, and a lot later sun in the day, giving it a little bit more chance to ripen and get a lot more fruit and kind of jammy characteristic to it. So the 2017 Quinta Ferrera Syrah comes from the Black Sage Bench just to the east of us. We love buying fruit from neighbors that are growing good fruit, and they grow some of the best. So for us to showcase something different and some different terroir in our own portfolio, it helps a lot to have neighbors that are willing to sell some fruit to us. Being that it's on the Black Sage Bench, it gets a little bit more sunlight. Golden Mile Bench, we get lots of brilliant morning sunlight, afternoon sunlight, and then the cooler evenings. And on the Black Sage Bench, we start to get morning, afternoon, and a lot more evening. So with that, we get a lot longer day to ripen the fruit. So it gets a little bit more fruit forward and a little bit higher alcohol to it, which I won't complain about. Bright fruit, about 50% new oak on that, all American. Wine's subjective. I don't want to tell you what to taste in this one, but for me personally, I'm getting kind of bruised cherries, blackberries. It's kind of like a really nice fruit salad to end your day with. So we have the 2017 Zinfandel from Rust. This is one of the oldest blocks that we have. It's on the very southeast part of this property. There's not a lot of Zinfandel grown in the valley. I think there's actually only about 7 acres under vine, and we have about 2 of those. It's a very special wine to us that's not really that easy to grow in this valley. It needs a lot of sunlight. It needs a lot of heat. And because it's kind of finicky and because we get so much frost, it doesn't overwinter that well. So we got really lucky here because we have that good air drainage. We have good soil that doesn't hold too much moisture. We tend to avoid a lot of the damage that can come from our winters that we get here. Albeit we don't have the worst winters in Canada. We're thankful for that. This is just a very unique wine to not only us, but to the Okanagan Valley. To be able to grow this on the Golden Mile Bench at the very southern tip, at the probably the most western and south tip of the bench, it's nice to just be able to sneak it on there and produce something that's a little different. So we don't make Zinfandel every year, just depending on what happens, but 2017 was the most current vintage that we have. It's just something totally different. If you haven't tried it before, I recommend it. Have it with ice cream, have it with steak, have it with anything that you really think has a lot of flavor that it needs to stand up to. If you can find one Zinfandel in the valley better than this one, I'll fight you. Well, it's a shame that we can't have you here with us this year for the Half Cork Marathon. As you can tell, I'm not much of a runner, but it would be nice to greet you at the cellar door. If you do make it into the valley, our doors are open 11 to 7, 7 days a week. We've always got bottles open. You can come decide for yourself which one you like. We have new releases coming in the fall, and if you come here during the months of September, October, you'll probably see us out there picking grapes. Feel free to come by and say hi. If you can't make it to the valley this year because of everything going on in the world, you can find us online at rustwine.com. We've got a great wine club that you can select what you want, and we also ship directly, and right now I believe it's still free shipping, so you can get on that and we can bring Rust to you. Much like rust in nature, the evolution is unpredictable, and that's a lot the same with our wine here. We don't know what we're going to get every year, and that's what makes it so special. So I hope you enjoy a glass of Rust, and we'll look forward to seeing you for the 2021 Half Cork Marathon. Cheers.